Croeso Sianel Blaid Llwyd. Before we begin the story, Howley and I like to tell you that arches can be an emotionally intense experience and may not be for everyone. Yes, once again we go back to the echo of 2020 and arches, and just in addition to my normal warning at the start, this Howley said himself is probably the most intense build of the VN, and I've read it already, so yeah, I agree with him. It's certainly the most intense so far, so I'm just adding an extra warning here. Just be aware of that. I think it's one of those things you need to be in the right mind place to watch, so if you're not, yeah, you might want to take a quick break now and come back and see a new VN on the weekend. Okay, I've said that. I just wanted to let you all know, and before we get started, as I always do in these videos, I want to say thank you to all my patrons and all my donors on Ko-fi. You are very much appreciated, and my top level patrons are Mohammed Al-Zamel, Aaron Fox, Dumbistachio, Exec, Monolay, Evan King, Marcus, Burnt Toast, Kartek, Gobers Visa, Besuksu, Larkaskitten, Bastion, Brian Hall, Tiger Cup, Eder Korval, Anubis Silverwind, Dissonance, Grizz, Spiderling, Kobe, and Sindri Dragowolf. So special thanks go out to all of them. That's it. All the links for Arches and the Echo Project Patreon are down in the description as usual. Okay, I can't put it off any longer. Let's go into it. Cameron stays curled up on the floor for what feels like a long time. He'd ultimately decided he'd rather watch the harmless pulsating arches dance behind his eyelids rather than the nightmare the trailer is becoming. Every minute or so the reality of the situation hits the coyote, and a burst of whimpering gasps escape his muzzle for a few minutes before fading back to only whimpering. He would stay down there until his trip was over, but Brian ended up pulling him back to where he was sitting. At this point the coyote doesn't fight the bear, going limp while his body is pulled along. For a minute Brian tries again to sit in the chair, but eventually just gives up, dropping Cameron next to the table where he just lies on the floor. The coyote listens to the old bear moving around the trailer, though it's barely audible over his own gasping sobs. Eventually, those lumbering, shuffling footsteps come closer, and Cameron knows that the old bear is crouching next to him, though the coyote still doesn't open his eyes.
Listen, kid, since you ain't gonna calm down, you're taking some Zans, got it?
Cameron listens, but doesn't move, afraid to do anything. Then he flinches as the rough, calloused paw grabs up his chin, forcing his mouth open slightly. Finally, Cameron opens his eyes a bit and almost gasps at the vivid red lighting, which keeps him distracted until something falls into his mouth. A pill, and Cameron recognises its distinct bar shape and bitter taste. Ryan holds out a cup, a plastic one that Cameron looks at with undisguised fear.
It's just water.
The old bear gestures at the counter where a gallon jug sits. When Cameron still doesn't move, Brian sighs. Then he gets up, grabs a cup straight out of the sink and pours it half full before drinking it. Cameron's mouth is as dry as the desert surrounding them, likely due to a combination of drugs and fear, and he really does want to swallow the pills to get rid of the taste. So he takes the cup and drinks, swallowing the Xanax, and despite his fear, he drinks until the cup is empty. He vaguely remembers his high school friends telling him to drink water to make his trip less intense. Cameron has a feeling that it probably won't change anything. Ryan takes the cup from the coyote's limp paw. It takes Cameron a second to realise the bear is holding out another pill that looks like a small red square.
Now put this one under your tongue.
Cameron stares, trying to figure out if it's just the trip making it look that colour, or... Ryan sighs again, becoming more impatient.
I broke a third off the bar I gave you.
But now Cameron is sure the pill is actually red, and he draws back. A counterfeit pill, and that probably means it's cut with something. Something like opioids.
I don't...
Ryan slaps him, the strike coming so fast the Coyote isn't even sure what happened. The sudden numbing sting on the left side of his face, along with the bright flash of light, is very, very familiar though, and Cameron feels as though he's travelled 7 years back in time. His delayed reaction is a surprised gasp as he raises his arms over his face. The bear yanks his arms back down and thrusts the pill at his muzzle. This time the Coyote opens his mouth willingly, manoeuvring the pill to sit under his tongue. His movements feel almost robotic at this point. To Cameron's immense relief, this seems to satisfy the bear, and Brian gets up from his crouching position, backing away. The Coyote sits there a moment, then slowly drags himself under the table, huddling in a corner as tears well up in his eyes again. After going through all that, and knowing there's plenty more to go through, Cameron longs for Devon more than he ever has before. He waits until the pill dissolves for asking the question he dreads hearing the answer to.
Is Devon, the bear, is he still alive?
If this giant, violent bear had encountered Devon and Artie, there's no telling what he might have done to them. His heart drops as the bear seems to hesitate.
Please, tell me the truth.
Cameron needs to know.
The bear is fine. He's locked up, but fine.
His tone sounds genuine, and even though Cameron will never trust him, he has to hold on to some hope.
If I do this for you, you'll let me go too? That's the plan. He your boyfriend?
Cameron isn't sure how best to respond to that, so he doesn't. Ryan shrugs.
Doesn't matter much to me. Just do what I tell you. Both be out of here by tomorrow.
It's quiet for a moment, and Brian moves to the other end of the trailer, opening the fridge and doing whatever it is he does. Cameron doesn't bother keeping track.
Let me know when you start seeing shit. Got something to do real quick.
Cameron blurts out the other question weighing heavy on his mind.
And Arturo, the cat, is he...
Ryan doesn't look back and just sighs again. Cameron doesn't ask any follow-up questions, feeling like he got his answer. The thought that Artie might be gone is too messed up for his drugged-up mind, especially because he feels certain that he can't be gone. Cameron can't explain why, but he just feels it. He feels Dev, and he feels Artie. Ryan stands next to the door, holding a plastic water bottle.
Going on for about 5 minutes. I'll be right next to the trailer. So if I see you try anything, I'll shoot your boyfriend in front of you and I'll kill you. Eventually.
Cameron doesn't move. But soon the trip intensifies and he hugs himself, the movement making his ribs ache from the earlier kicks. He just watches the vivid colours and shapes of his hallucinations. Meanwhile, the acrid taste of Xanax lingers on his tongue. He hadn't felt any pain. He doesn't feel any pain right now either. Not physically, at least. It's something deeper. It's about who he used to be, who he is now, and who he's about to become. Something profoundly terrible has happened, and it's changed everything. He knows that much, at least. What he really wishes to know right now is who the hell he even is. He tries to think back to what he last remembers. Standing in front of everyone in the second grade, his trembling paws holding his book report. He clears his throat, trying to figure out how to put his sentences together in advance.
Speak up, Arturo. The whole class needs to hear you.
Arturo. That's his name, Arturo Herrera. He opens his eyes. But how did he end up here? Where are his classmates? Second grade, or was it third? No, he's positive he's at least in high school. He tries again to remember what happened last. He was sitting in the junior parking lot with his girlfriend. She was upset because another girl at school was being mean to her. She's a Jaguar, sitting in the passenger seat of his beat-up sedan, one of her feet up on the dash, and he's leaning toward her to kiss her on the cheek. What's her name? Sarah Mendoza. Or was it Montoya? And now I remember they didn't last long at all. Maybe only a semester. Probably because he sucks at comforting people. He does always say the wrong thing at the wrong time. But he still had several girlfriends after her, up until...
Maria?
His voice is so alien, so strange, it startles him a bit. What's even more strange is how hard it is to even say her name. He stutters and he has to chew around the syllables like he's biting at the letters. As he does, he notices a sour taste in his mouth and he can smell vomit. Looking at the forest floor in front of his face, he sees a dried mess of what he's sure is the source of the smell. Bits of something orange and mushy and chunks of what he recognizes as jerky. Things are starting to come together, but it takes a long time, maybe even an hour as he goes in and out of consciousness. Maria, Pueblo, Devon, psychology, graduation, behavioral tech, road trip, accident, echo. Cameron, THC cartridge, visions, ghosts, panic, bear, gunshot. Gunshot. He's been shot. It's only now that he realizes his current position, curled up on his side, arms folded up in front of his chest. He tries to move his arms, but like everything else he's trying to do, it's very difficult. His muscles feel unnervingly weak, and every time he moves it comes with an uncontrollable twitching and trembling. Arturo stares at his paws, watching the tremors, trying to quell the panic. Finally, he slowly manages to sit up. Immediately, dizziness overtakes him. He has to pause for several seconds where he's sure he's not going to fall back down. Once he's sitting up, his stomach turns and he dry heaves, and that's when he feels the pain. It's not terrible, but the deep, cold throb at the back of his head feels very wrong. The shaking paw, he reaches back and finally feels the damage. The fur is crusted and matted, becoming a bit damp as he gets closer to the source. His fingers brush over a slight gap, like there's a small crater in his fur. As he presses down, he realizes the crater goes past the fur and past the skin, and then he feels something oddly hard and almost sharp. Arturo gasps, realizing the stiff, jagged thing he's running a finger over is his broken skull. He jerks his paw away, breathing hard. He was shot in the head. In the head. He remembers deciding to run, since the shotgun wasn't loaded. But then the bear had taken out another gun. A handgun, and then... How is he alive? How long will he stay alive? Is there a bullet in his brain right now? He knows he needs something, so he tries to ask for it.
I need shelf a melt.
He struggles to not stutter, say the right word that he knows he's trying to use. He knows that this is very, very bad. Devon was hurt too, maybe even killed. And Cameron, he was already hurt. It was a monster in this forest that hurt him. The cat brings his knees up to his chest, putting his arms around them like he's a child. He feels like a child, helpless and completely confused as he sits injured in this terrible forest. This must be some kind of awful dream, and he wants to wake up. But even though everything feels unfamiliar, surreal, dreamlike, he knows this is real. Arturo feels his face crumple as he starts to cry, pushing his forehead against his knees.
I need something.
No, wrong word.
I need someone.
There's some relief that Arturo feels like he's improving at least a little bit. Maybe this is only temporary? He's been told several times in his psych and neuroscience courses that the brain is plastic. The fact he's recalling these memories, making sense of these memories, gives him hope. There are still certain things, very simple things, that are missing.
Ruin my life.
Arturo jerks his head to look up, heaving again as another wave of dizziness and nausea sweeps through him.
Cameron?
He looks in the direction of the sound and sees a trailer partially hidden behind tree trunks and bushes, about 30 feet away. His right ear pops loudly several times and he rubs at it, feeling fluid come out. He knows it's blood. The cat slowly begins to stand up. Immediately gets a terrible shock as he realizes the weakness he'd felt in his arms is also in his legs. He struggles and stumbles his way to the tree, trying not to panic again before finally leaning up against it.
Miko, I can't breathe.
Arturo realizes he's not the only one in this nightmare. Did the monster come back for Cam?
I'm sorry.
Arturo starts moving toward the trailer before it dawns on his shattered, bewildered mind that he's looking at that bear's trailer. The one that shot him, and he must have Cameron in there.
Devon, help me! Devon!
Arturo finishes back at the sound, his fur bristles out along his spine, eyes wide as Cameron's scream echoes through the forest. The cat looks around helplessly, hoping that Devon does come to help. Even though the evil bear is bigger, Devon's a pretty big bear too, and he would stand a much better chance than he himself would. Thuds followed by yelps and howls come next, and finally it's too much for Arturo.
Dev, you're Cameron.
He can't go in there like this, he knows that, but he can get help. Maybe. Depending on how bad it is, these problems he's having could get a lot worse over the course of just a few hours. But he has no choice. While he knows he has a car, he also knows that he can't use it, even though he can't remember why. He remembers there's a highway, the one they should have gone to the second he got here. He needs to get them all help. So, with one more terrified look at that trailer, he starts to make his way out to the forest. At first, Arturo is filled with a sense of hopelessness as he finds out just how hard it is to walk, with his right side being almost limp. Feels like half of his muscles have just wasted away. After some trial and error, he finds if he widens his stance a bit and swings his arms in a way that looks a bit lopsided, he's able to keep his balance. His pace is reasonable as well, so swallowing down his panic again, he makes his way back onto the dirt road. Even through the disbelief of his situation, even though he's terrified for Cameron and Devon, he feels something deep down that's even worse. He tries to ignore it, but it gnaws at the back of his brain. He's dying, and he can feel it. Devon struggles with his handcuffs, trying to get the chain into the position that he wants. He pulls his paws up until the chain is taut, then moves slowly in a circle around the bolt till the chain twists on itself. That was the easy part, and based on the tension he felt being put on the chain links, he'd been feeling pretty confident. Then he'd spent what feels like the last hour trying to actually put enough force and weight into the motion so the chain would break. While the twisted chain is taking most of the pressure off his own wrists, it still hurts. Devon can see through his fur that he's already starting to bleed from his wrists, and fur is coming off in small tufts with each failed twist and jerk.
Come on! Damn it, please!
After another failed heave, Devon slumps with his paws pressed to the floor of the van, gasping and sweating. A wave of dizziness comes over him, and he ends up pressing his face to the metal floor.
Please help me.
Devon half-heartedly prays, just in case there is something above all of this. Footsteps. Devon scrambles to twist back around and step over the anchoring bolt, so his paws are behind him again, sitting up to face the back door of the van. It opens, and Devon finds himself staring at the bear that did this to him. Even though he doesn't want Cameron anywhere near this man, seeing that the coyote isn't there with Brian sends panic through the younger bear.
What do you want? Where's Cameron? Please.
Shut it.
Devon watches with dread as he sees the huge bear holding that water bottle.
Please, just tell me what you want. I'll give it to you, and just let me see him.
His teeth snap together. Next thing the bear knows is his head is resting against the metal cage partition that separates the back of the van from the seats. Dazed, his chin is on his chest, his arms under his back, forcing him to arch his chest and stomach towards the van's roof. Then Brian is on him, pressing the bottle to his lips. Dazed from the punch, Devon can only mumble in protest.
No.
Devon sees the look in the other bear's eyes. He knows that eventually he's going to have to drink from the bottle again. Feeling completely defeated, Devon can only plead with the man.
Wait. Just tell me what you want. Is he okay?
Oh, you're really starting to piss me off. You don't do what the fuck I tell you.
Brian grabs Devon's chest for him both paws and hauls him up so he's sitting in a more upright position.
And take it on, you little cocksock yote, you understand me? Now shut up!
But Devon can't shut up. He's half convinced that Cameron is already dead.
Please, just let me see him so I know he's okay.
Alright, I was going to say you already earned in one good hit, now it's two. One and a third?
Devon just stares. Of course he knows that Brian doesn't need an excuse. If he really wants to hurt Cameron, he can. Because there's nothing Devon can do. He can only do what the older bear tells him to do, so he opens his mouth. Slowly, Brian pours a slightly bitter water into his mouth, and Devon drinks. Even though his body wants to keep drinking, Devon starts to pull back after only a few swallows, as if he's had enough, doesn't even suspect that the water is drugged. But Brian pushes the bottle hard enough that Devon's lips are painfully mashed between the plastic and his own teeth, and he's forced to keep drinking. Even when he lets a tiny bit dribble out from the corner of his mouth, Brian growls more threats at him. Eventually the water is gone, and Devon hangs his head in defeat as Brian pulls back, backing out of the van. Devon squeezes his eyes shut, wishing this fucking bear would just tell him what's happening, what he's doing to Cameron, why he's keeping him alive. But the younger bear is too afraid to talk, too afraid of what Brian might do. Without another word, the van door is slammed shut. Cameron stays under the table, the Xanax having kicked in fully by this point, leaving the coyote in a bit of quiet, stoic haze. His sobbing has trailed off, not much emotion left in him aside from feeling numb. His trip is getting more and more intense. He knows that the peak is nearing, maybe another half an hour. Still he begins to notice things that he's sure aren't part of his trip. A presence, not too far away, one that he knows very well. Dev. With no idea what he's doing, instinctively reaches out toward that warm energy. Then he's interrupted by another presence he doesn't recognize, one that's much closer. Cameron gets on his paws and knees, looking out from under the table. The vision is definitely different than anything he's experienced before. Unlike the dreamlike, reality-altering psilocybin, the vision he's entered has a clarity to it, like he's not even tripping at all. The figure of someone appears before him, and Cameron knows everything immediately. Benjamin Kowalski, a rabbit, born in 1977, ran away from his Pueblo home when he was 16. For several years he moved from city to city, sometimes in surrounding states or settling in Peyton. He stocked shelves at a grocery store. The extra money saved up would fund his weed supply. Brian was his dealer. In September 1998, he agreed to let Brian take him to his trailer home in Echo. He was promised 2 ounces of weed in exchange for 1 night of love-making, as the bear had put it. Benjamin wasn't gay, and even if he was, he's pretty sure Brian wouldn't be his type. 2 ounces was a lot, though, and way too good to pass up. After 4 days of torture, Brian accidentally strangled him for too long, and Benjamin didn't regain consciousness. Of course, Brian planned on killing him anyway, so he did. The bear was only disappointed he didn't get a few more days with him. Timothy Esposito was a skunk born in 1985 in a decaying industrial Midwestern city. He transplanted to Mesa. In May 2005, that was where he attended a BDSM-themed event in an unused warehouse. He liked breath play, and so did Brian, so they fooled around a bit. He didn't much like Brian, but the bear liked him a lot. Brian liked him so much, in fact, that he followed the skunk as he walked home after the event and kidnapped him on an empty street. Timothy was strong, almost escaped multiple times, once managing to leave the trailer before being caught just a few dozen feet from the dirt road. Brian continued their breath play, except now it wasn't play at all, and after 2 weeks Brian again suffocated his victim for too long. This time Brian thought he was fairly successful in keeping his victim alive that long. Daniel Gallegos was a ferret born in 1996. He was from the Sonoran capital, was staying with family in Mill City to work a summer job. He was saving up money for his university tuition. In August 2014, days before he was meant to head back to Sonora, he met Brian outside a club while being kidnapped and driven to Echo. Brian was able to keep him for an entire month. Even though a few of Brian's customers had seen him tied to the torture rack, no one said a thing. Eventually, Brian seemed to decide he'd gotten all he could out of the ferret, and he bludgeoned Daniel to death with an old tire iron, just because he wanted to try something different. The bear couldn't believe how long it took, how hard he had to hit the kid before he finally stopped moving.
Cameron!
Cameron is jolted back to reality, yanked up by his shirt, so he's not even touching the floor. Brian's paws hold the front of his shirt while shaking him violently.
What is it?
Cameron kicks around to try and get his feet on solid ground again. Despite being almost overwhelmed by the numbing calm and the Xanax, it's not enough to stop the primal fear Cameron has of this bear. Especially after seeing the horrors he committed on those men. What he'd just seen was condensed, distilled into an easy-to-follow series of events. For all the while he'd absorbed all the tiny details too. He knows Brian promised these men many things. They'd only keep them for 1, 2, 3 more days before letting them go. If they'd just be a little more quiet, he'd let them go. But Cameron knows none of those promises were kept. The visions have been so real that to Cameron, it felt like he'd been there for everything they went through. Luckily, he hadn't felt anything, as if he was in the room with them. This room. Brian seems to gain some control over himself and lets go of the coyote. Cameron's unable to stand with his weak, shaking legs and sits down heavily on the ground looking up at the looming bear.
Kept calling your name, you wouldn't answer.
I told you to let me know if the visions were starting.
I couldn't. Ryan waits, looking more impatient the more Cameron stammers, which makes him only stammer more.
I swear to fucking God, why don't you become whimpering little dipshits the second I lose my cool for like a second?
He reaches down, and Cameron cringes as he's yanked up to his feet again. It's clear that Brian wants him to keep standing this time, so he does, steadying himself against the table behind him.
Quit that crying.
He does his best to stop. The sobs keep coming. Brian, the visions, the people he just felt. It's not an easy thing to just shrug off.
I said to quit, not be quieter.
Cameron's mouth dries up even more, his tongue now sandpaper against the roof of his mouth as fear helps shock him into a statue-like state. Cameron knows he owes a lot to the sedative right now. Without it, he wouldn't be able to stop, and Brian might kill him.
That's better, but faster next time, got it?
Okay. Cameron opens his mouth to answer, but finds himself yanked forward suddenly, only to come to a horrible jarring stop as the bear slammed his knee into the coyote's torso. Cameron watches the luminous arches writhe about, convulsing, almost like they're mirroring the coyote's inner turmoil. The knee is so big compared to himself that it seems to cover most of his chest and stomach.
You can thank your boyfriend for that when he still earned you one more.
Brian finally pulls back, and Cameron crumples to the ground, unable to process what Brian is saying. Not that he'd be able to understand it anyway. The coyote lets out guttural groans over and over again.
What's that you're saying?
Brian taunts him from above, and Cameron responds with a whooping gasp, pressing his face into the floor in agony.
Ask you a fucking question.
Cameron is lifted in the air again, feeling his feet kick around for purchase on the ground as he once again dangles from his shirt, the fabric stretching to the point that Cameron can hear the threads popping in his collar. Cameron cracks open an eye and sees Brian drawing back a huge paw, and Cameron manages to choke out a few words with the tiny amount of air he's gathered into his collapsed lungs.
Nothing. Nothing.
Cameron wheezes loudly between the words, notices exactly what Brian likes. But how can he stop himself? He's not even sure if stopping himself will help. Maybe that will only trigger Brian into hurting him more. But to Cameron's relief, the bear pauses and slowly drops his fist. Cameron sees the wild look in Brian's eyes gradually leave as he stares at the gasping coyote in his grasp.
Good. Guess I'll save you for later then.
The bear lets go, and Cameron slumps back to his knees, curling up again in the fetal position.
Now what was it you saw?
He didn't feel any pain. But now he does.
Speak up, Arturo. The whole class needs to hear you.
He's in front of 20 curious, attentive eyes, while his paws shake, almost making his papers rattle. He's had less than a year to learn a new language. Now they expect him to give an entire book report. He'd give anything to be in his room, gaming on his brand new PlayStation 2. But first, he has to figure out how to survive these next 5 minutes. He's playing his PlayStation 4 in his dorm room when Maria walks in.
Hey, beautiful. You able to get some sleep?
He doesn't look up from his game.
Oh, you should know my overflow toe.
That makes him look up.
Huh?
She looks confused, frustrated.
Born and swollen, to mourn and forlorn.
He puts down the controller and stands up.
Baby, what?
Arturo installs a lock on the medicine cabinet. He helps her eat healthy. He helps make sure she goes to bed at the right time. Whenever she feels the mood swing approaching, high or low, they prepare together. Maria once cried and told him she wasn't worth it, that he should find someone that isn't an unpredictable mess. He told her she was definitely worth it, they just need to be prepared. Arturo opens his eyes, then cringes at the ache in his head. Not an ache, but an explosion ripping through his skull, his brains and down his spine. It hurts so much he lets out a sound that's a half moan, half scream. This time, it seems to take even longer for him to understand where and when he is. He'd been moving as fast as he could without actually running or jogging, since he's incapable of doing that. He guessed he'd probably made it 2 miles away from Echo, so 5 more to go. He'd just been thinking about how he's walking almost exactly like his grandfather did after his stroke. Arturo had thought, no, I'll actually have something to bond over, before it happened. A dizzy spell, unlike all the others, made him stumble, like he was looking over the edge of a cliff. An anxiety like he'd never known before overcame him, making his heart beat so fast Arturo was convinced it was going to explode. He got on his knees, started praying for help, and then... Now he's here, on the ground, his nose and forehead stinging from what just slammed in the asphalt, and the rest of his body just aches. He'd had a seizure. Even though he's never had one before, he knows that's what happened. At least he's on his knees, so his face didn't have far to fall. Still, he's left feeling so exhausted, so defeated that he just wants to lay there. He'd been in a half-dream state, completely confused as he stared around him, memories flicking through his mind like a viewmaster. An hour had passed, maybe 2, before he finally understood what his situation was again. He almost wants to go back to that confused state, pretend it's a dream. But now he's crying. It's how he's going to take care of Maria if he can barely walk, barely talk. She's good at taking care of herself, but he needs to be there, just in case. He needs to live. He needs to get better. And while he's glad to be out of Echo, he knows Cameron is still there. And if Devon is gone too, he knows the bear would only want him to save Cameron.
Get up, Arturo. All your friends need you.
Eventually, he slowly sits up, his paws shaking so badly. He's worried he's having another seizure. Eventually, he steadies himself. He needs to keep moving. So with a deep, shuddering breath, Arturo starts to carefully get up, and that's when he sees it. It stares, and Arturo just stares back silently. In that moment, he's sure he actually did die, that what he assumed was a seizure was really just the end. And now this thing, this embodiment of death, is here to take him. Instead of moving toward him, though, or really acknowledging him in any way, doesn't move at all. Arturo notices something out of the corner of his eye, and though it's distant, he sees lights. Headlights. Multiple headlights moving in both directions on the landscape. The highway. Arturo looks back, but it's gone. With nothing else to do, he starts to get up. He's sure he didn't see those lights before he collapsed, but a lot of memory is missing. Several patches between when he was shot and now are unaccounted for. What he just saw is probably a product of his failing brain. So, wordlessly, he walks in his wide stance with his arms swinging awkwardly, knowing that nothing will be the same again. After telling Brian everything he can remember, the bear seems satisfied.
Did you try and talk to him?
No, I didn't have time.
Brian waves away the coyote's excuse.
Just do it next time. I won't interrupt you.
Cameron wants to tell the bear that he's not even sure he can talk to them. Because after all this time, he's starting to think he shouldn't even be able to. He can see what's happened in the past, maybe even see what might happen in the future, but that's it. He only sees their record. But if they acknowledge him, communicate with him, then that's something he doesn't want anything to do with. Devon had said he doesn't believe in demons. That's what Cameron thinks they are. All of these unexplainable forces that haunt and torment the living. It's all demons. Brian disappears again. Because he doesn't grab the coyote, Cameron assumes he isn't meant to follow him. A minute or two later, Cameron hears a loud snorting sound and he flinches. Then it happens again, and Cameron looks over to see Brian leaning over the counter, head low. Combined with the sound and posture, the coyote knows the bear is definitely snorting something. He's been in a similar position many times in his past. Either way, he's not about to ask the bear what he's snorting. He can only hope that it's something that knocks Brian out, or at least slows him down. After sniffing and dabbing his nostrils, the bear returns to Cameron's side.
Well, let's go outside to a spot, then you'll get better reception or whatever.
Before Cameron can fully comprehend what Brian just said, he finds himself being forced over the huge bear's shoulder before being lifted in a fireman's carry. Cameron closes his eyes, clutching to the fur of Brian's back as the bear lumbers heavily around, listening to the sounds of a screen door swinging open then shut. You can sense that they're outside, the air warm from the lingering heat of the day. Then he finds his feet coming into contact with the ground. Cameron looks at his surroundings while Brian ambles around 5 feet away, kicking at the dirt and foliage. It's twilight now, at least as far as Cameron can tell. The eerie, ominous red hasn't gone away, even though they're well past sunset. First time we tried shrooms, colours did change, when scent they became more vibrant and saturated. The forest looks like it did when he had the vision about the static entity. He's with Dev then. How is this even happening? Who's having these thoughts?
Devon? What?
Cameron jolts back to the present, even though it's not the present, because time has stopped existing. This is just a moment in a never-ending series of moments. Is time always happening at once? Ryan is still looking at him with a piercing gaze, and his fur is once again writhing about on his body as if it's come back to life.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time concentrating.
He lost himself for a moment. He just blurted the first name that came to his mind, to center himself, confirm that he still exists. The trip is reaching the same levels he experienced in high school that sent him running through an unfamiliar public park, his friends having to chase him and pin him down.
Ha! I'll fucking bet. Leave a measure I gave you because I thought you'd only take one swallow. It's a fuck ton, though.
Oh. There's nothing he can add to that. It's scary, but it's the way Brian is acting that's really scaring him. Whatever he took is very obviously kicking in, and it's definitely not calming him down.
Something wrong?
Brian's tone is taunting and cruel, and to Karen's horror, Brian comes closer, right next to the coyote.
No, I'm just feeling off because of the shrooms. Ah, shit. You're on like 3 milligrams of Xannies too. I totally forgot. Fuck, you better not fall asleep and go delirious on me, Instant, because if you do, I'll probably just kill you.
Cameron stays still. He's reached a stage where he feels solidly stuck in a deep dream, one he'll be in for several more hours. Who's dreaming?
Hey, what's the matter? Making you feel uncomfortable? Is there something wrong with me?
Cameron shakes his head with tiny jerks, barely moving it.
I asked a fucking question! I'm noticing you're on something, that's all. Well, no shit, kid. Think I was blowing my nose in or something? Well, I was thinking maybe we were going to see things together and you take a downer. It looks like you're on an upper. Well, I don't want to see that shit when I got you. I don't like the ones out here, that's why I took it. Well, I guess what I'm on?
Cameron doesn't, but now that he knows Cowan isn't going to help him, he plays along. Maybe cocaine? Adderall?
You fucking kidding me, kid? Adderall? Do I look like a college brat trying to pull an all-nighter? Shit's like a cup of coffee to me.
Cameron doesn't say anything, but Brian keeps quiet like he's waiting for the next guess.
Meth? Too expensive, but close enough. It's methadone. Okay, sorry, I never really did stims.
Not at what happened to his mother.
Bath salts.
Oh. No.
And it feels fucking amazing.
What follows the sight of a 500-pound bear awkwardly dancing and swinging his massive arms around violently, growling and laughing. It's terrifying. As the crazed bear is shadowboxing about 20 feet away, Cameron begins to realise he might be able to run. With his muscles weak from the sedative, his mindset absolutely fucked from the hallucinogen, he may not be able to outrun Brian. He's starting to forget he even exists. Still, he might be able to hide. The desert's full of cracks and crevices he might be able to squeeze into to wait out. Brian is there, heaving for breath.
But can't relax. It's been a while, so I'm getting a huge rush. My heart's probably going to give any day now.
Please let your heart give out. Please just die and let this nightmare, this decades-long nightmare we created, end.
Way too much. It's making me forget what we're even doing. Remind me again, little buddy.
Brian smiles at the young coyote, and Cameron takes that as his cue to smile back. If Cameron is remembering correctly, stimulants make people more empathetic, and he hopes he can tap into that.
I'm going to help you calm down some spirits.
Cameron wants to say, and then he'll let me go. But Brian doesn't keep promises, and bringing up might only trigger him to do more terrible things. That, and now they're outside, Cameron is sure he can feel Devon's presence. Alive, but hurt, like how he's desperately trying to figure out what to do next. But Brian seems to know exactly what's on Cameron's mind.
What about your bear? Maybe I was getting the wrong vibes, but I thought he's your boyfriend.
Of course, that's why I'm doing this.
Oh fuck, I've got to tell you, overheated in the van. Got to strike that you're not even there too long.
A few seconds pass, during which Cameron's mind is telling him of 10 different ways to react. Cameron knows for a fact that Devon's alive. But she'd act terrified to satisfy the bear? Brian interrupts with a giggle.
Nah, it's fine. Just want to make sure the feelings between the two of you are mutual. Your face said it all.
Brian laughs again and even lets a little high-pitched whoop that echoes around the quiet forest. Not knowing what else to do, Cameron does his best to go along with Brian's game and forces a laugh.
Holy shit, you got me there. Thought my heart was about to give out. Damn, you're cute. Cutest little Yoda I've ever seen. Oh, thanks, but you know drugs. They make everything seem better. I think I'm more on the ugly side of things, if I'm being honest. I mean, I haven't showered in a while either.
Cameron pretends to self-consciously smooth over his head fur.
Yeah, you're cute for I am tap. Also, that guy shit themselves. I think they were scared or they thought they'd stop me doing what I did. They didn't, because this shit I'm on makes me horny as fuck. It's only the cute. It's cute thinking it might help you.
Of course. Cameron saw the torture Brian inflicted, and the bear had to be drugged up when he was doing it. Cameron can especially remember Daniel's experience and his thoughts. 10, 15, sometimes even 20 hours of non-stop physical and mental torture, and it would go on and on and on, wouldn't stop until the bear's exhausted body would pass out. Then he would sleep for an entire day, sometimes longer before the process would begin again.
I give you, we've got more important things to do. Come, stand here next to me.
Okay, I'm going to help you. Cameron tries to make it sound like he's on the bear's side. Who's thinking these thoughts? As Cameron moves to stand beside Brian, it finally seems to sink in that Brian is going to kill them. Not because it's obvious, but because he's starting to pick up on the bear's thoughts. He's reading his mind. He thinks he murdered Artie, but he didn't. For whatever reason, either because he's outside or because he's spacing out even more, he's certain of that. He'd never been close friends with the cat, but Cameron had gotten to know him, and that feeling, that amalgamation of a person is Artie, it's still out there. Cameron mentally reaches out to the cat, but it's so far, so distant, and something is wrong with Artie. His amalgamation is missing some parts. Devon's is still full and nearby, and it shines like a beacon in the darkness of the barren desert. So, while Brian is telling him to contact people he murdered and buried under the ground, Cameron instead reaches out for Devon. A few minutes after Brian left, Devon became frantic. Even though he knows it won't help, it only makes things worse. The instinctual part of his brain overwhelms everything. With low, bearish grunts and growls, he yanks and pulls and lunges with all of his weight, just trying to get something other than his own wrists to break. He already contemplated dislocating or even breaking his thumbs to pull his paws out of the cuffs, like he'd seen characters do in some movies. But just by looking at the metal, you can tell they're too well fitted for that to do any good. He can gnaw his thumbs off and he'd still be stuck. So he just yanks until blood is seeping into his paw fur, and with that added lubrication, they don't budge. Please, please, please. It's the only word he says with each grunt of exertion. Finally, as the drugged water begins to take its effect, Dev slumps on his side, crying. He sobs harder than he ever has in his adult life. Cameron, I'm so sorry. Cameron, please. He killed them, or because he needed to find out. Turns out he will find out, because they're going to die. How could he do this to Cameron? How could he be so stupid, naive, inconsiderate, selfish? In a flash of rage and desperation, Devon viciously gnaws at his right forearm, snarling. Again he knows it's senseless, pointless, detrimental. The self-loathing is all-consuming, he mostly just wants to punish himself. For several seconds he stops. After blinking away the blur of tears, he sees that while some fur is missing, he barely broke the skin. Devon lets out a hopeless, despairing laugh, even while tears stream down his face. The metal enclosure makes the laugh sound loud and hollow. That's when Devon stops, he realises how unhinged he sounds, how he shouldn't be acting like this. He doesn't have a right to break down. His friend is dead, his best friend. Devon knows he needs to do everything he can to get out. The next time Brian's within reach, he's going to do everything he can to make sure he dies. Rip his throat out. While that fire's rekindled in his chest, he can't fight whatever drug the bear gave him. Devon suspects it's making him a bit delirious too. Either way, it's powerful, and Devon knows he probably won't be able to do much for another hour or two, so he lays down, trying to keep his ears open so he can be ready for the old bear if he comes back. Cameron dies, it doesn't matter if I escape. I won't be able to live with that. Matty! Matteo! Huh? No one's used his second name since... Why can't you just watch her? Devon! Devon stays curled up, because he knows he imagined that, or his brain is playing tricks on him all. Devon, it's me, I'm here. Cam? Devon stares at the swirling patterns and lines. Are you okay? No, none of us are okay. You're not okay. I don't even know if you're alive. Devon tries to move toward Cameron, but he stays at a constant 10 feet away, no matter how hard the bear tries to get to him. Devon, I am real. Cameron carefully enunciates each of those words. I'm doing this through, my mind, I think. I'm fucking psychic, remember? Well, now I know this is my bullshit. This is what got us into this nightmare in the first place. Devon. Yeah, you know what? Fuck you. Fuck you. You're exactly what I was hoping you'd be. You don't exist. My sick, fucked up mind is making this up, the version of you that I have no right to create, and... Devon's voice trembles with emotion. He's never had a dream before he's felt this real, this alive, and of course it's happening when he's feeling his absolute worst. I just wish you were real so I could actually tell you how sorry I am. But I can't take any of this back, even if we somehow make it out. You look fine. I know you're not fine, because you're with that goddamn bear. It's quiet for a moment, the only sound being Devon sobbing. Devon, I know there's much I can do to convince you I'm real. All I can say is that I am real, and I love you dearly. I love you too. And yeah, Brian is hurting me, just like he's hurting all of us. What's he doing to you? What happened to me not being real? Well, just in case. Are you okay? The look on Cameron's face makes Devon's stomach drop.
Well, not really, no. But he's keeping me alive, so that's what's important. You see those patterns?
Yeah.
Well, Brian drugged me with shrooms and I'm tripping absolute balls right now. Hallucinogens enhance my abilities. I think I kind of created this space. I really can't make this stuff up.
Well, maybe alright. But he drugged me too, you know. This could still be me.
Don't give psychedelics to someone you're trying to sedate. Anyway, it turns out I'm not that different from my mom. It's all arches. I see them when I take certain drugs. Devon looks up the patterns. For the first time he feels like this might actually be real.
Cameron?
It's me, yes.
Cameron! Oh my god, please let this be real. Baby, I'm so sorry.
No. We don't have time right now. Also, I kind of read your mind, so I already know. Sorry about that, by the way. It's just happening automatically. I can sense Brian's thoughts too, and I now know where you are, where the van is. You're in a set of handcuffs. I know where the keys are. I'll get you out, somehow.
Cameron, honey, please don't do anything that might get you hurt. Please.
Devon sees Cameron's lips tremble. Devon, you know I can't promise that in this situation. Neither of us can. But we're doing this together.
Cameron!
Shit.
Brian, is he there with you?
I'm going to be fine, but I gotta go. I love you.
Cameron! Oh, damn it, please.
He crumbles into the darkness, feeling helpless. He should be there with Cameron, not here sleeping and doing nothing. We're doing this together. With a great deal of effort, Devon smothers frustration and terror. No, he should have some faith in his boyfriend. If Cameron thinks he can do this, then Devon realizes he has to believe him. He just wishes he could fully believe what just happened is real, even though Cameron convinced him at the moment. So he continues to rest, waiting to see as Coyote comes to free him, and hopefully then he can finally get his claws on Brian.
You've been sitting there a good 10 minutes, so what'd you see?
Well, I'm having trouble because they won't talk to me.
Oh, why's that?
I think it's because you're here and they're scared of you. Maybe if you... Cameron screams, clawing clutching the huge fist on his ear. Brian twisting it viciously for lifting up so Cameron's feet actually lift off the ground. Didn't know it's possible to feel that much pain from his ears, even though he knows they're sensitive.
Ah, stop! You sneaky fucking faggot.
He violently shakes Cameron. The coyote twists his body, grabbing the bear's forearm, trying to get his legs lifted up and wrap it on the bear's biceps to lessen the pressure. But Brian won't allow it.
You know you said everything out loud just now.
What?
You know exactly what.
Cameron is slammed up against the trunk of a tree, the impact resonating through his body. Instantly, Brian's huge, rugged muzzle is right next to his own, snorting heavily. Cameron fights as best he can. His feet are off the ground again, and he kicks and twists. The grip is more powerful than anything he's felt before. I actually feel his eyes bulge, his tongue stick out involuntarily. Once again he finds himself drowning. In that moment isn't the crushing pressure on his neck, the horrid rancid breath that's coming from the old bear that Cameron notices most. It's that Brian doesn't even seem angry. Doesn't seem enraged that Coyote had been contacting Devon. Doesn't seem upset that Cameron broke his word to help the old bear with his demons. Instead, Brian looks excited, ecstatic, and all while staring right into Cameron's face, watching the Coyote's mouth open and close noiselessly. Vaguely, Cameron can sense a battle taking place inside Brian. He desperately wants to have his way with Cameron. He also wants Cameron to exorcise the ghosts. But Cameron can also sense that Brian is realizing his plans were doomed from the start. How would he ever hide the fact he killed a loving couple in this infamous abandoned town? He knows people will look for them, like his previous victims. The bear is deciding they're all going to die. This is the end, and he'll end it with one final victim.
Doesn't fucking matter.
Brian hisses in Cameron's face. Something moves out of the corner of Cameron's eye. He looks to see a somewhat familiar face. It's black, void-like features with swirling red eyes stare at him. It's watching him too. It's like it's just as fascinated as Brian.
Cameron senses very little intention or emotion from this creature. He finally realises its purpose in this forest is simple. Record the terrible things that happen in it. Cameron is about to become one of its next recordings. The coyote's vision blurs and one paw drops. To slip into Brian's pocket, disguising it as him trying to push the bear away. He feels and finds a single key that he knew would be there.
God damn it, you're a fucking cute one, you know.
Brian's voice trembles with cruel, passionate emotion and nuzzles the coyote. He squeezes harder, and Cameron's eyes roll up, all while putting the key in his own pocket. But he's not sure it matters. Ryan isn't letting up. As he fades into darkness, Cameron feels a part of himself die. The trip peaks, and suddenly Cameron is everything at once. He's a trailer home in the northwest. He's a desert lake. He's a broken road in the middle of nowhere. He's been hit by a van. He's a train cutting through the wilderness. He's been shot in the head. He's been hung from a tree. He's been beaten to death. He's swimming under an arch. He's in a space shuttle smashing into the ocean. He's a dead town. Dead. But with working reflexes, using tools still clutched in its grasp. Cameron disappears, and these thoughts and feelings are no longer his, because he isn't who he is. He is everything. And because of that, he can see everything.